welcome to this week's Productivity Enhancer. This week we're going to take a look at smart objects in Photoshop. Using smart objects is a really great way to add photos together or maybe overlay a photo on top of a template without using destructive editing. If you were to say just go ahead and open up a file and have it open up using pixel-based editing, we can do a lot of editing, but a great deal of that's going to be destructive. So by using smart objects, you can transform freely, you can edit in the raw, and it will all be non-destructive editing. So as is the case for most things in Photoshop, there are a few different ways to open up a photo as a smart object. You can always go up to File, Open as a Smart Object, and choose your photograph. And if we take a look up here on the tab, you can see that it is a smart object. It has the name of the photograph as Smart Object 1. It's currently scaled to 25% of the actual size of the photograph, and it's not opened as a PSD file. You can also see, if we take a look at the icon, we have the smart object icon in the bottom right hand corner of this thumbnail. So when you open up a photo as a smart object, what Photoshop does is it makes a copy and it drags a copy of that photograph into Photoshop, and if you double click on the name, and it gives you a little warning saying that any changes that you make to the original photo will be brought back into the smart object. So we click OK, and then we have that JPEG open right here, ready for any kind of editing. We can also access the smart object from the bridge. Here we have a photo, and if we right click on it, we can open in Camera Raw. And by opening in Camera Raw, we can make any of the non-destructive edits that we would like. Let's take this exposure down just a hair, bring the contrast up, take the highlights down. Let's play with shadows. I think we want to take the shadows up, take the whites down a little bit, take the blacks up, move the clarity up just a tad, maybe move the vibrance, and leave the saturation right at 0. So that's all non-destructive editing that we've done in the raw. Now you can see we can either open that image and it'll just open the JPEG into Photoshop, or if we hold down Shift, you can see it changes to Open Object. Now if we open Object, it'll open up as a smart object. If you're finding that you're working in mostly smart objects, then you can always change that by clicking on the workflow options. And if you put a little check mark next to Open in Photoshop as smart objects, then we have the Open Object permanently here until we hit Shift, and then it changes to Open Image. So let's open that as a smart object. And we want this photo to be brought right onto this template here. So let's just go back and duplicate that layer into the template. And you can see that photo is much bigger than our template, so we're going to need to transform it. So we just hit Control T and Control 0, and Control T opens up the transform options, and Control 0 finds all the edges. Now if we hold down Shift when we transform this option, it's going to maintain the proportions. But let's just move it a little off to center, because if you remember, our template had a line going straight down here. And we just want to separate myself from this bicycle. And if we hit OK and Control 0 again, and it'll bring it back. Now if we just hit the Alt key and hover over the line between these two layers, we can create a clipping mask, and that'll clip our photo right onto the template. I think I can get that bicycle a little better aligned in there. So I'm going to transform this photo once again and just kind of move it over here and drag it up. There, I like how that looks, so I can hit OK. Control 0 brings it back, and we have a nice photograph of myself featuring my bicycle overlooking the desert. So by making those transformations to a smart object, Photoshop doesn't have to discard any information when the photo is resized. Also, the adjustments we made while in Camera Raw are just applied to the copy of the image that was created for the smart object, and none of that will be applied to the original JPEG. You can always do further editing to the smart object by just clicking on the thumbnail. By doing that, it'll open up this Camera Raw screen, and as you can see, all of the controls that we moved before are in their exact position. They haven't been reset to 0. Let's say we want the exposure taken down just a little bit and the shadows removed just a little bit more. We can click OK, and that will be applied to the smart object in the Photoshop file. Now that's one way to use smart objects. If we go back to our bridge, we can open up a different photo. And just by double clicking in the bridge, it's opened as a regular JPEG. Any editing that we will do will be pixel-based editing, and that'll require Photoshop to ditch some data once we do those transformations. However, we can convert this photo to a smart object right from here. Let's duplicate it and put it on our template as well. And here again, the photo shows up much larger than the template. So if you notice, our photo does not have the Smart Object icon right in the thumbnail there. So if we right click on it, we can convert it to Smart Object. Also, we can go up to Layer, Smart Object, and convert to Smart Object as well. But if you do convert to a Smart Object, you'll probably just right click on it. That's the easiest and quickest way. Now this photo is now a Smart Object. You can see the icon in the thumbnail. And if we hit Control T, Control 0 to zoom out, by converting this to a Smart Object, any transformations made now won't eliminate any data from this photo. So you can see up here we have 43.87 that we've reduced it to. If we accept that, Control T again, then that same number will show up, 43.87. It won't reset to 100 as it would in pixel-based editing. But it's not exactly the same as if you convert it to a Smart Object in the Camera Raw file and then bring it into this document. Now if we click on that thumbnail, it won't open up our Camera Raw data. It'll open up a PSB file of that photo. You can see here, layer 2 PSB, and now any editing that we do here will now be pixel-based and destructive. However, this is good if you do want to remove something from this photograph. Say you want this cloud removed. We can go up and grab our healing tool, click continue, and then we can heal until that cloud disappears. And that looks good enough. Now when we save this file in the PSB and close it, it will show up with that cloud diminished in the Smart Object that we created earlier. So the differences are very subtle, but they do exist. Chances are most of the time it's going to be better for your workflow if you convert the file to a Smart Object before and then bring it into your composite or your template. So as long as you're aware of when you convert to a Smart Object in a project, it's not the same as dragging a Smart Object into your project. So those are Smart Objects. I hope the next time you make a composite or you use a template for your photo, you consider using Smart Objects. It's a really great way to utilize non-destructive editing, and it's really the way to go if you're experimenting with looks or colors or different things that you might not want done permanently to your photograph. So thanks for watching this weekly productivity enhancer. I hope it's been helpful. Until next time.